Good morning. Are you ready to read the second part of Johnny and his mule? You remember what happened with the mule? He accidentally bought it at an auction. Now we have to wonder what in the world he's going to do with this mule. Well, let's look at a few words we're going to run across today. Make sure you know what they are before we get to them. So that first sentence says, she is a jolly person who's always smiling and laughing. What does jolly mean? Happy, joyful. I love people like that. The coach looked on wretchedly as his team was losing. What does wretchedly mean? It's kind of like the opposite of jolly. Wretchedly would mean like having this ugly, sour look on his face, like he's just so upset and so mad. Just, ugh. That plank of wood is just the size we need. Plank of wood is like a board, kind of. The dog sat down on his haunches and refused to move. What are haunches? Back on his hind legs. He sat down on his hind legs and he wasn't going to move. She was grieved for a long time that her pet ran away. What does it mean to be grieved? Very saddened. Very sad and sad-like. All right, let's look at page 100 in our reader book. We're going to look and find out what in the world Johnny's going to do with this donkey or this mule. You know, I wish I had one. I wouldn't ride it. I wouldn't use it for anything. I would just go pet it because I just love donkeys and mules and horses. I love them. Okay, let's read and find out. Now remember, this is our deal. I read it, but you have to follow along. Remember that. All right, so as I read, this is what you're looking for. How the children and the teacher helped Johnny with the mule. And what did Miss Mary suggest to help cheer Johnny up? That's what you have to listen for while I read, okay? All right, this section is called Budging the Balker. When the bell rang for closing time, all the children rushed into the schoolyard and gathered round the mule. They were in a jolly mood, laughing and joking and poking fun at Johnny and his animal. Such a sad-looking critter. What you gonna do with him, Johnny? Asked his little friend Matthew. Johnny didn't feel very happy. I don't know what to do with him, he said wretchedly. It took me 2 hours to get him a few blocks to school. How long will it take me to get him home? I live 5 miles over the mountain. It'll be black night and the owls are hooting before I get him halfway there. Johnny leaned against the tree beside his mule and began to cry. The children stopped laughing and looked solemnly at each other. Hold on there, Johnny. You can never tell about a balking mule, comforted Matthew. He may be ready to go by now. Maybe he'll start right off. Johnny brightened. He untied the mule's rope and tried to lead him forward, but the mule was not ready to go, and he didn't start right off. Johnny braced himself and pulled. But the mule was not in the notion. Give me a handhold and I'll help you pull, said Matthew. I'll help too, said Nancy Bell. Both children threw their weight against the mule, but he didn't budge. Make room for us, we'll all pull, said Hetty and Hank. They grasped the mule's halter and hauled with all their might, but the mule only braced himself and stood in his tracks. While the children were pulling and straining and puffing and blowing, the teacher came out of the schoolhouse. Let me get a hold, I'll pull too, she said. But one more made no difference to the mule. His mind was made up. My father once had a balking mule, popped up Nancy Bell, and he used to get him to go by twisting his ear. Twisting his ear? Echoed Hezekiah. Who ever heard of making a mule go by twisting his ear? Well, it's true, insisted the little girl. That made him go. It wouldn't hurt to try it, said the teacher. Go ahead, Nancy Bell. You're the one who knows how. You twist his ear. Nancy Bell grasped the long, droopy ear and twisted. I keep losing my spot, I'm sorry. The mule stood pat. Twist again, twist harder, said the children. And Nancy twisted, but it was no good. The mule didn't care to move, and twisting his ear didn't make him change his mind. He only rolled his eyes and wiggled his ear to make sure it was all in a piece. My uncle once had a balking mule, offered Hetty, and he used to get behind him with a plank and push him. That's That's right, added Hank. They used to push the mule with a few steps forward, and after that he would go all by himself. Maybe that's just what this mule needs, said Miss Mary. Where can we find a plank? The children hustled around, and underneath the edge of the schoolhouse they found a long plank. They put it behind the mule's haunches and pushed. They huffed and puffed, but the mule stood pat. They stopped for breath. Maybe the mule's hungry, spoke up Nancy Bell. If we got a piece of corn and held it out to him, maybe he'd follow after it. Johnny ran to the nearest house and brought back an ear of corn. He held it out to the mule. Yes, the mule was hungry. He stretched his neck toward the corn. The children held their breath. The mule took one step forward. Johnny backed away, holding the corn just out of reach. The mule took another step forward, then another, and another. A loud shout rose from the children. Hooray! Hooray! He's going! They yelled. The teacher held the mule's halter while Johnny danced ahead with the corn. Through the town they went, clip-clop, clip-clop. Over the mountain trail they started as fast as they could go. But still Johnny didn't seem to be very happy. A balking mule is no good to anybody, he grieved. I'm afraid my pappy will be cross when he sees this critter. Like as not he'll be giving me a good licking. No use borrowing trouble, said the teacher. Let's sing a song and forget all about the mule. Johnny struck up an old mountain song, and along they went singing. Moon's a-rising on Thunderhead Mountain. Hey, hey, step and go lightly. Hound dogs a-baying, we're a-going hunting. Hey, hey, step and go lightly. Chased a coon into a gum tree. Hey, hey, step and go lightly. Shoot at the coon and hit a froggy. Hey, hey, step and go lightly. Thought I had a possum in a tree there. Hey, hey, step and go lightly. Shoot that tree and down came a he bear. Hey, hey, step and go lightly. Mr. Bear, please don't catch me, sir. Hey, hey, step and go lightly. Catch that fellow behind the tree, sir. Hey, hey, step and go lightly. Moon's going down, my song is ended. Hey, hey, step and go lightly. Mighty good thing, for I'm pretty nigh winded. Hey, hey, step and go lightly. All right, that's the end of that section. So let's see if we can ask a couple of questions about this and see if you understood everything that was going on. Can you look back at page 100? How do you know Matthew's words helped Johnny stop crying? Remember when Matthew said, well, maybe he's been tied up and he'll go now. It's right at the very bottom of page 100 on the left-hand side. It says, hold on there, Johnny. You never can tell about a balking mule, comforted Matthew. He may be ready to go by now. Maybe he'll start right off. Look at the very top of the next section. It says, Johnny brightened. That kind of tells us that he stopped crying. He brightened his face up. His countenance changed. What words describe the balking mule after each try to get the mule to go? Let's see. It says at the top of page 100, right, the section that's above the donkey, it says, but the mule was not in the notion. And then below that it says, but he did not budge. He was not in the notion. He wouldn't move. Those were some of the words. What does it mean he didn't have the notion? That means it's just a kind of an old way of saying he wasn't going to do it. Look at page 101. What solution did Nancy Bell suggest? Twisting his ear. That's right. Now, I want you to find the paragraph that describes the mule's response when Nancy Bell twists his ear. And as you read this section, I want you to show the children's hope that twisting will work and then their frustration when he doesn't move. So let's see, right here. It's on page 101 on the right side. It says Nancy Bell grasped the long droopy ear and twisted. Okay, now you start right there and you read all the way down to where it says he rolled his eyes and wiggled his ear to make sure it was all in one piece. You read all that section out loud and read it like the children are very excited and then they're disappointed. Read it like that. When you read that, did you start out like this? Twist again, twist harder, said the children, and Nancy twisted, but it was no good. The mule didn't care to move, and twisting his ear didn't make him change his mind. He only rolled his eyes and wiggled his ear to make sure it was all in one piece. Did you read it kind of like that? Have you ever tried to get an animal to do something, but the animal was just stubborn and wouldn't do it? If you have, well, what was your solution? How did you fix it? If it were me, I'd probably just walk away. Look at page 102. It's got a picture of Johnny trying to give him a piece of corn. How do you know the children and Miss Mary think the plank idea is a good one? Well, one of the kids said that's what their dad did, so they were trying it again. They said, well, maybe we can do that. How do you know the children worked hard to move the mule with the plank? It says that they huffed and puffed, but the mule stood pat. So they were out of breath. That tells us that they were really working hard. How'd the author let you know the children can hardly wait to see if the corn idea will work? Because then their next idea was the corn. And how'd the author let you know that they were excited about this? Look on page 102 at the last paragraph. What does that first sentence say of the very last paragraph? The children held their breath. That means they were just like, oh, I hope this works. Look at page 103. Could Johnny take the mule home without someone else's help? He could, but that'd have been a hard thing to do, don't you think? Yeah. What does Johnny mean by getting a good licking? It means he thinks his dad's gonna whip him. You ever had a whipping? Would Johnny sing that song and would the characters talk that way if they lived today in a big city? No, in fact, you'd probably get in trouble today by singing something like that. I think that's a pretty cool song. What about you? Oh, I wish I could sing it a little better. Okay, get your work text out. Now close your book. You don't want to look and see. We got to see if the mule is going to be of any use. We got to see. Tomorrow we're going to find out what his dad thinks about it and what they're going to do with it. All right, so look at page 40 and 41 in your work text. Okay, page 40 is optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but you can, and if you do, then turn it in to me and I'll give you a grade on it. But this actually is a story taken from Numbers chapter 22. It's one of the best Bible accounts, I think, because God made a donkey speak. So if you've never heard that before, read that section. It's Numbers 22, 3 through 41, and this big green box kind of puts it all together in a summary. But you don't have to do that page. It's optional. I would like for you to do page 41. It's going over Proverbs 20:11. Even a child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure and whether it be right. So your job, I'm not grading it, but I do want to see it. You have to read each little paragraph and then you have to write down what you would do. Okay? All right. That will be all for today.